Good morning, everybody. This is Commissioner Corrigan. I believe we are awaiting the arrival of Commissioners Monger and Melton before we get started. So if everyone will be patient, we'll be starting here in just a moment.
That was all right. Yep.
While we're waiting for Commissioner Melton, who is going to be online for Human Services to present this Temple Buell grant? Is that Kelly? Are you on the line?
So this grant was intended to be
Pat, you were not coming in very well. Could you speak up? So, Pat, we are not hearing you right at the moment, or I'm not hearing you anyway. It seems like our technology is failing us today. Kendra, are you on the line?
Tim, Pat appears to be muted. I don't know.
Hi, Beth.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Oh, I'm seeing a chat note. The Human Services item was intended to be a consent item that was postponed. DHS will not be present to present. So I guess we can take a look at this. What we have in front of us today is consideration for approval and signatures for the 2020 Buell Foundation grant awarded to the Fatherhood Program of Routt County in April of 2020. The Fatherhood Program.
I don't see any reason why we can't go ahead and approve it. It's pretty normal what we've been doing all along. So I would be supportive of moving forward with it.
Yeah, and I think it was originally intended to be on the consent agenda. It just didn't make it for yesterday.
Great. Well, then I would be happy to entertain a motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve and authorize your signature on a 2020 Buell Foundation grant awarded to the Fatherhood Program of Routt County in April of 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. And Kendra, if you're on the line, I'm assuming that I will see this via DocuSign, or if necessary, let me know if I need to print out and physically sign and scan and return the.
I'll send it to you through DocuSign.
Great, thank you very much, Kendra. So the next item on our agenda is a presentation from CPW. Chris Middledorf, are you with us?
Good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you just fine. And Chris, who else, do you have anybody else with you today?
Yes, we have all the managers for CPW, including Julie Arrington at Steamboat Lake State Park, Craig Preston at Stagecoach State Park, and Jacob Dewhurst at Yampa River State Park. And the
Great.
purpose for our conversation today is that CPW has been given direction by the governor to reopen camping services on our CPW properties, including state parks and state wildlife areas. Over the past 96 hours, CPW has been working on this reopening plan in a phased approach. And our hopes is to have this plan implemented here starting towards the end of the week and throughout the month of May. We'll be following CDPHE guidelines and recommendations on all of our camping services. We can get into the details with any questions that you might have on what that would look like. But ultimately, we need the support of our county commissioners and our counties on moving forward. We want to make sure that we do this following county orders, and we'd like your support. If you decide that we can move forward on this and support it, we would be happy to work with local county officials on what that implementation may look like and make sure that the wildlife area along with the 3 state parks are communicating with commissioners and with the health department and others within the county. With that being said, I will leave it up to questions. I'm sure there's a few, but ultimately we are looking for support from the county commissioners on being able to reopen camping for Colorado state parks and disperse camping on state wildlife areas in Routt County.
Thank you, Chris. Maybe before I open it up to for questions from the other commissioners, I know I had a good conversation with Craig Preston of the Stagecoach State Park a week or so ago, and I thought Craig did a good job of describing to me the protocols that they have in place now, because the state parks are actually open to visitation, is my understanding, just not for camping. So, Craig, if you wouldn't mind reprising that conversation that you and I had, that might be helpful for the commissioners.
Sure. So currently, the state park, and I can speak for Stagecoach and the other 3 parks should be very similar, but we're currently open for business. What we do have closed currently are our campgrounds, our picnic areas, our swim beaches, and our park offices. So what that creates is folks can come out and walk the trails. They can fish from shoreline. Stagecoach recently opened to boating on May 1st. So at Stagecoach anyway, you can come boating. So we're just, and honestly, we're seeing a lot of folks. We're seeing it as busy a spring as we've seen since I've been here. And I just want to extend that to the camping situation.
Craig, maybe you could also briefly describe some of the protocols that you have instituted at Stagecoach in terms of cleaning and preparing your facilities.
Sure. So we're working under CDPHE and CDC protocols as far as cleaning with the proper bleach mixture, etc. We've got all the restrooms signed with social distancing messaging. We as staff are wearing masks when we're doing face-to-face customer service situations. We have limited the amount of staff we have in the office at any given time. So part of our staff is working from home and part of us are still showing up. Some of the staff has the ability to work from laptops and be mobile on the park while still accomplishing what we need to. I think that's most of what we're looking at right now.
Great. Thank you, Craig, for that. I appreciate the efforts that you guys have been making to date. Maybe I would entertain some comments from the managers of the other 2 state parks before I throw it back to the commissioners for questions.
Yeah, this is Jacob Dewhurst. I'm the manager over at Yampa River and Elkhead State Parks. We're a little bit interesting in the fact that part of our park is in Routt County, part of it is in Moffett County. So as of yesterday in the governor's order, we've moved forward with opening camping on the Moffett County sides of our parks. What we're seeking to do is kind of extend that into Routt County.
Thank you, Jacob. Julie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just because we're at a little higher elevation, we're a little bit behind what everyone else is doing. Normally this time of year, we would still have snow, and we are melting off faster this year than other years, I would say. So we have not opened to boating yet. We are going to open this Saturday, and so we'll have inspectors available. And we're only going to open one boat ramp instead of the two that we normally have. But we'll be providing inspectors at the boat ramp every day from here on out. The other thing about opening is that we typically do not open our campgrounds to reserved camping until the Friday before Memorial Day. So that would be the 22nd this year. And part of the guidance that we're given to reopen campgrounds is that people have to have a reservation. So we are looking at sticking to that. And if we're able to open in May, we are not looking to open until the 22nd.
Thank you, Julie. Commissioners, do you have any questions for CPW staff?
I do. Can you go, Chris? I think that in your email you indicated like a timeline. Can you just restate that? Which state parks in Routt County are looking to reopen camping when? I just say it all at once for me so I can keep track of it.
I can certainly jump in there real quick. Craig Preston over at Stagecoach is looking at Friday the 15th. I don't want to speak for Jacob Dewhurst. I believe it's in the similar time frame. And Julie Arrington State at Steamboat Lake would be again the 22nd of May.
Great. I don't have any other questions. I do have a couple comments. Do you want me to make those now, Tim, or just questions for now?
Why don't you hold on to the comments? I have one question, and I'll let Doug weigh in first if he has any questions.
Yeah, so I was a little, so this is Doug. I was a little confused on the cleaning protocol of the common facilities. And so if you could reiterate to me, I understood. It sounds, the park has been open for not camping, but so that means the restroom facilities have probably been open and the boat launching facilities have been open at Stagecoach. So I guess my question is so what is the protocol? And not that I'm an excellent judge on it, but I'm just kind of curious to know what that protocol is. Is that once a day to do those cleaning supplies and restrooms and those kind of things, or what is that?
So this is Craig at Stagecoach, and we here at Stagecoach are currently doing at least once a day, and most days we're able to do a second cleaning throughout the park. Currently, as of today, the only facilities we have open are vault restrooms. So obviously wiping down the door handles and seats in those. The expectation would be when we open to camping, we would like to open our flush facilities. So that's sinks and flush toilets. We, again, here specifically to Stagecoach, our shower facilities are within the marina bathroom. So we do not plan on opening showers, but we would like to have the toilet facilities open in that building.
I don't want to jump on any of the other managers. Go ahead. Is that Jacob Dewhurst or? I'll just jump in real quick,
Yeah,
Tim. We have swim beaches again being closed, the camper services buildings where they have the showers. it's been suggested to us to keep all the showers closed, but get the toilets open. We're looking at cabins and yurts, the enclosed facilities remaining closed for the time being. And it would be, you know, people's individual campsites that would be open. We were looking at a phased approach depending on the reservations that were already made, but looking at fully implementing this over the next couple of weeks to where we could have everybody with the reservations on our sites, with bathrooms being cleaned at a minimum of once a day. And then we would still keep our visitor centers closed to the public as well. Hopefully that answers some of your questions, Commissioner Monger.
Yep, thank you.
I do have one additional question, Tim. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's great. Go ahead, Beth.
Can you, Chris, can you talk about, or any of you talk about how your park staff are monitoring enforcement of the state orders, specifically with regards to gathering sizes? I assume that you've had some direction from the state directly about how you're supposed to be doing that.
So I'll start again. This is Craig at Stagecoach. We have made a couple, I'd say a handful of contacts for that specific situation where people were gathering in larger groups. And at this point, we the first attempt is education and explaining why they're not supposed to do that. And so far that has worked. So we have not had to get, I'd say, more aggressive along those lines. So that's how we're handling it here at Stagecoach.
Okay. I guess the only question I have, I guess I have two questions. One is, I think what I'm hearing is that you're not going to be imposing any artificial percentage of occupancy on your campgrounds, that you're going to be opening up the campgrounds fully depending upon, obviously, the demand. Is that correct?
I think I'll let Julie and Jacob answer this question more in detail. I do have a bullet point here that reservations through May 15th have been canceled, but park staff will be reaching out to campers who had reservations beginning on May 12th, and they will be given the option to use their reservations. Once the existing reservations are addressed, if a park is below 50% capacity, they may open reservations through 5/15 until they've reached 50% threshold. After 5/18, May 18th, parks that are open will be open to full capacity in a reservation system. But I'll leave it to the park managers on what that looks like on their parks, and also maybe some suggestions from commissioners if that is a concern of yours about capacity thresholds and percentages of how many spaces are occupied.
Chris, this is Jacob. I can speak to that since we did go through the process of opening campgrounds in Moffat County yesterday. Basically what happened is just how Chris described it. We opened up those campgrounds. We honored the reservations that are in place for today through this weekend. The reservation system then has a cap of 50%. So when that campground books at 50%, regardless of which sites book, it will then turn off the availability capacity to make a reservation in that campground. So it's not something that we're monitoring. It's something that is being monitored through our reservation system. And that is set to expire, like Chris said, on the 18th. So that 50% capacity would just be through this weekend.
Okay, thank you for that. Jacob, Julie, did you have anything to add?
No, just because we're going to be opening outside of that timeline, that doesn't affect Steamboat Lake at all. I did look at our reservations for Memorial Day weekend, and we're full. We have full reservations for Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, Julie.
And this is Craig at Stagecoach. The first person talking was Jacob Dewhurst out at Yampa River Elkhead. So I'll be honest with you. I was hoping to open all 92 sites here at Stagecoach this Friday. I'm absolutely willing to work with and align with everyone else if that's what's necessary, and only sell half of the sites. But logistically, it's more challenging here because we had previous reservations in place that we haven't canceled pending this discussion.
Great, thank you, Craig. Commissioners, any more questions, or would you like to move on to some comments? Okay, comments. Beth, I know you had stated that you had some comments. Let's hear from you first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with regards to campgrounds, I understand and I really appreciate CPW looking to work with us in partnership locally. I don't know that we've clarified the question of whether our local lodging order has jurisdiction, but I think Tim's right that it probably doesn't, but it's more a matter of just working together. We should probably make sure there's clarity on that moving forward. And I don't think we're going to have that right now, but that would be maybe a follow-up item. The second statement I would make is that I believe it would be prudent, since public health was not able to join us early today, for Chris to request that they review the protocols that he has in place for feedback. I think that would provide some assurances to us as well as to the public about what CPW is doing. And again, that would really be a courtesy on the part of CPW that to me would be very much appreciated. The third thing I would say is that in terms of social distancing and some of those types of concerns, personally, I think that as long as you all are monitoring gathering sizes and ensuring that people are not gathering in large groups, that campgrounds, I think I saw a statement in a plan from another county that campgrounds are naturally socially distanced. And so and they're outdoors, right? So I'm personally, and I would want public health's perspective, but not as concerned about the spread of the virus within a campground, but the bigger concern is bringing out of town visitors in to Routt County and the potential for introducing new cases in that scenario. So I think the final request I would make, and again, obviously there are three of us, so I'll let Tim and Doug weigh in as well. But we're hearing a proposal, in about an hour from the Lodging Association, and they've included a list of information that they will be providing to visitors who come into town. And so I would suggest that one other thing that you all could do is align with that in terms of information provided to visitors at the campground. It's a list of those 5 commitments of containment and some recommendations for being safe while you're in town. I think I saw from Dan Gibbs that the state is producing some recommendations, like avoiding trips to the grocery store, purchasing your food before you get to town. Some of those, there was a list of some things about safe outdoor recreation and travel that I think was also coming from the, but my request would be that our local campgrounds commit to providing guests with the same information that the lodging establishments are committing to providing. So those would be my comments and requests for you all.
Commissioner Corrigan, can I address that comment from Commissioner Melton?
Yeah, no, I think that'd be great before we move on to Commissioner Monger.
In the essence of time, I know that we have, our protocols. I know we have the 5 commitments for containment, along with the email or the direction you saw from Executive Director Dan Gibbs, the DNR, with people stopping in town and grocery shopping. We can easily provide that and put that together in a short manner of time. The question I have for you is alignment with the lodging community. Does that mean that we work with the chamber, we work with the lodging community to make sure we have the exact same messaging? And if so, can you please let me know who the best person to contact is so that we can try to complete that task in the shortest period of time?
So I don't know, obviously we haven't had that conversation with the Lodging Association yet, although I was on a call with them yesterday, just in reviewing their proposal, which is attached to our public agenda, and we'll be reviewing with them at noon. They have a list of some information that they're planning to provide to guests. And so in terms of alignment, I would think that I think the chamber is helping them to develop something consistent. Personally, I would feel comfortable if you were providing something that has similar content, but if it's easier for you to just get what they are producing and distribute that, I'd be fine either way as long as the content is similar. But I think the best contact for you would be probably Kara with the chamber, because I think she's coordinating the development of that information for distribution by the lodging establishments. Does that answer?
Absolutely, it does, Commissioner Melton. Thank you. I will assure you that the information that we provide to our guests, along with to you, will be from the state and what you've seen from Director Gibbs. And I'm sure that in general will be in alignment with what our local lodging community do. We will also reach out to Kara and see how we might be able to supplement that information with some more of the local context that you're speaking of.
Thank you, Chris. Doug, comments? Any more questions?
So I guess, a couple things. I think Beth hit it pretty well. First off, especially if we're working on a reservation system, I hope that that you guys, I haven't looked at your site or whatever, but during the reservation process that you clear message to them that don't come if you're sick. We don't want to see you. So that's the main thing. I don't think I personally am fine with this moving forward on this. The clarity of the discussion of whether our lodging rule fits, I don't think we're going to get that before our rule runs out. I'm pretty certain that our rule doesn't affect the campgrounds, but I appreciate very much you guys working with us, that we kind of have a message out there too that we can collectively send. I do want to also say, the gathering, sometimes, you might have 2 campers that are coming from the same clan, and I talk to the clan or the herd or whatever the herd is, but, so I hate to, if they're coming together, they've probably already been together. So, the gathering part of that order and the rest. So I guess main thing, I just want to make sure that you guys are, educating your people. If I remember right, I think at the EOC meeting about 2 weeks ago, we had somebody coming into Stagecoach Park that ended up getting hauled off in the ambulance, and that ended up. So, we don't want to have that happening and exposing our emergency responders to that as well. And so anyhow, we're all dealing with that. And at the same point in time, I think camping is somewhat social distancing, and I'm welcome to have it done responsibly and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. So one of the great advantages of being a chairperson is that by the time it comes to me for comments, my fellow commissioners have mostly covered it. So at the risk of repeating a couple of things for clarity's sake, number one, I am personally okay with moving forward with the opening of the campgrounds as discussed here so far today. The reason that I'm okay with that is I do see a big distinction between indoor and outdoor activities. and I believe that camping is inherently includes social distancing. Um, I really appreciate Commissioner Melton's comments around the communications, and I appreciate Chris, your willingness to go ahead and provide the same level of communication to your guests as we're going to expect of the rest of our lodging community. And then finally, I really appreciate CPW's willingness to come forward and have this discussion with us. Again, I'm not a lawyer, and Doug alluded to it. My understanding is that you folks could probably just go ahead and open up without working directly with the counties. So the fact that you've been willing to do that and you're sitting here today having this conversation just speaks to the level of partnership that we have with CPW, and I think that's a good thing. So I don't think that we necessarily need any kind of a vote here. I think what you have heard from the commissioners is our support for you moving forward as you have described, with some requests to work with us on your mitigation protocols and communications. So having said that, I'll throw it back open for any last comments, starting with you, Chris.
I don't have any other comments. Thank you, Commissioner Corrigan. That last piece, I think, is good guidance for us, and all four of us managers will ensure that the county commissioner's health department, along with lodging, that we get that information out that you've asked and provide you with the protocols that you've requested. And like you said, this is about a relationship. Although it might be state property or it might be federal ground, for the U.S. Forest Service or the BLM, we do believe in making sure that we hear you out and we do our best to align ourselves with you. So if you see any issues with us moving forward, please let one of us know as soon as possible so that we can address that with our supervisors and make sure they are aware. Otherwise, I will take it that we are going to move forward with camping on state parks and dispersed camping on state wildlife areas, of which there is only one in northern Routt County near Three Forks Branch. If there are any other concerns, please let us know, and then I'll leave it up to Julie, Jacob, and Craig to see if we have any other questions or comments from the park managers.
Doug, Beth, any last comments before we let Chris and CPW go?
Tim, I'm not sure. Terry Ladra just sent me a text that makes me think she and Dr. Harrington may be on the phone.
So Terry Ladro, Dr. Harrington, are either one of you online with us at this time? Apparently not.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood what she said. Thanks, just wanted to check.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Yes, Eric, please.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to correct or clarify something you said moments ago. Under the provisions regarding camping under the Safer at Home order, host counties do have the opportunity to object to the opening of campsites, just to let you know. And there's a process for that.
Thank you, Eric.
As you stated, it's pretty clear that there is that opportunity, and the campgrounds couldn't just operate even if the county said no. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Eric. Fortunately, in this case, it does not appear that we have any specific objections. So, but thank you.
Tim, on that point though, I understand that part, and thanks for that, Eric, but our local public health order, which doesn't expire until May 31st, prohibits camping. And so I want to make sure that that is not applicable, because if it is, obviously a modification would be required before the state campgrounds could open.
I think as it stands, it is applicable.
Commissioner Corrigan, can I mention something again?
Please.
I think this is the key issue right here in trying to figure out what we need to do in order to make sure that it is okay for state parks, state wildlife areas to open camping in Routt County, to ensure we're following all these public health orders. So I'm not sure where that ball is and in which court to make that final determination. Whether and I guess what we are seeking down the road here in the short term and as soon as possible is some letter of support from the county commissioners to move forward. Now, if that's in contradiction to your current public health order and that keeps camping closed in Routt County until the end of May, I gather that is something we're going to have to deal with. But I just need to make sure that we are clear on what that recommendation is from the county commissioners so that we can move that up through our chain of command and have that conversation on what that might look like.
Well, things were going swimmingly until we decided to get into the specifics of the applicability of our public health order to your operations. So it appears to me, and I'll open this up for discussion with my fellow commissioners, it appears to me that in order to allow CPW to move forward, that we would in fact need to amend our current public health order prohibiting short-term lodging to allow for campgrounds generally and CPW operations in particular an exemption or at least some consideration within an amended public health order.
I would agree with that.
That's what
Yep.
I just heard Eric said. And that, I guess my comment would be that's a little bit of a different consideration than just expressing support for CPW's plan. You know, I think we have expressed support for CPW's plan, but I think a consideration of amending our public health order is going to require a little more time and opportunity for the community to give input on that. And obviously we can't make a decision on that right now. We haven't agendized it that way, and we so I guess I'm not quite sure how we proceed on that.
So I think we need to put it on our agenda again for next, or like on Friday or something. To
I would
modify
agree.
the, go ahead, Tim.
I would agree with that. Commissioners Melton and Monger, that would be my recommendation, is that we provide direction to staff to prepare a new public health order that includes the allowance for campgrounds in general to operate, and have that placed on our agenda for consideration on Friday. So my question to staff, Mark Collins, you're on the line, I assume? Mark?
I am, Tim, absolutely.
So if this is the direction that the commissioners would like to move in, how would you handle getting a new public health order prepared and placed on our agenda on Friday?
Commissioner, we would certainly do our best to be able to prepare that for you. I'm just wondering whether Friday is going to be enough time. Maybe Eric would want to weigh in and talk about what the timing in the legal office may look like.
I need some clarification before I answer the question, please. So currently the lodging order, as you said, Tim, does prohibit camping, amongst other things. One way to modify the order would be to remove camping or expressly allow for camping. The second would be my recommendation, if that's the route you choose. But keep in mind, there are also private campgrounds in Routt County. Is the direction to allow camping in those areas as well, or just on state lands? So another option would be to still prohibit camping, but carve out those campgrounds that are on state lands. And then another option, I don't want to confuse things, but another option for you, which I don't recommend, would be to simply issue guidance like the state does. What I have found with the state doing that, it just gets confusing. My preference would be simply to modify the order, which could be done by tomorrow. I would ask the Friday agenda item, if you're inclined to do that, be set in the afternoon to accommodate that, even though I know it's been recommended that the Board of Health not convene late on Fridays, but I would suggest early Friday afternoon would be best to get this prepared.
Thank you, Eric. Comments, commissioners?
Considering that we've expressed our support and we feel that we have good reasoning for that support for camping to reopen on the timeline that's being requested, I'm okay with the idea of, with input from public health, obviously, because this is an amendment of a public health order, on allowing ground from our local public health living lodging. However, given the timeline, it might be prudent to recommend that keeping reservations through this weekend not be canceled, because I'm worried about the timing, and obviously we will do all comment and carefully considering the concerns of the public and of public health, and considering that we heard that Elkhead and Stagecoach are both looking at May 15th reservations, which is Friday, when this would be considered. I'd suggest that maybe we ask them to push back one more weekend while we do a careful consideration of amending this public health order. This feels a little bit like I wouldn't want it, sorry, it doesn't feel like it, but I wouldn't want it to feel like a rushed decision on our part without receiving adequate comment from the public prior to making that decision. So I don't want to presuppose the decision, I guess, is my point.
So
I'm still comfortable moving forward on the 15th and still having the conversation and having the decision then. You know, if we're not going to open, then they'll just push them all down to Elkhead Reservoir. So, you know, they're going to be in our backyard anyhow. So yeah, we can hear comments from our public and for the people. And again, yeah, public health needs to comment on this, but they're only one part of the facet here. We're talking about a lot more than just the facet of public health. So I'm comfortable, and then again, I think let's keep it as simple as, and I think I'm not interested in having the conversation on Friday about the rest of the camping. As Eric has said, I think we change let's keep it simple for right now. Let's open this thing up for the camping on the state parks lands, which we already know have mitigation protocol already set up and ready to take off and go with that. If we open up for everybody else, we're going to have to make sure we have the mitigation protocol on all of those other things as well. So that's my comments.
So thank you for that, Doug. That was going to be the issue that I wanted to address, which is it's going to be tough to come up with a set of mitigation protocols between now and Friday that we're comfortable applying to all camping operations. But I think we are going to have some kind of a mitigation protocol presented by CPW for us to include if we're going to consider allowing state parks to open. So, Chris, do you think within the next 24 hours that you would have the opportunity to provide for us a set of mitigation protocols?
Yes, I think in 24 hours we can provide that to you. The only thing I cannot commit to is the alignment with the chamber. We'll reach out to Kara Stroller as soon as possible to make sure we have those materials as well.
Yeah, I don't think that the alignment with the chamber is something that would need to be included in any kind of an amended public health order. But I do think that the mitigation protocols would need to be attached to the public health order. And then uh, I'm a little bit torn between my fellow commissioners right at the moment. I'm hearing from Commissioner Melton that she does not want to rush into this without adequate public input and certainly input from public health. But on the other hand, I'm very sensitive to Commissioner Monger's comments that folks are going to be here anyway. And I could see where this would place a real hardship upon CPW, upon our partners at CPW. I'm also concerned that that we may be perceived to showing some favoritism towards CPW that we're not extending to our other private campgrounds. But on the other hand, it is CPW that is here in front of us today with an actual request. So I'm going to come down on the side of moving forward with a new public health order to be considered on Friday afternoon that will be specific to allowing CPW campgrounds to open. Commissioners Monger and Melton.
Yeah, I just will follow up on my comments. I don't disagree with anything that you just said. I would say for me, the consideration of allowing only public campgrounds that are managed by the state to reopen is because they have oversight from the state. And we know that DNR and CPW are working with CDPHE and at the state level to ensure that there are appropriate measures in place. And we don't have that level of reassurance from private campgrounds. We have to, I believe we have to treat them a little more like other private lodging establishments in terms of mitigation protocols and those types of things. And that we'll be doing that, I assume, we haven't decided yet, but I assume that we'll be doing that at the end of this month. And that just gives a little more time for those private establishments to put in place the appropriate protocols. My comments regarding moving forward, I don't have a concern with moving forward on Friday. I would not want anyone, while I think we all probably have our opinions about where we'll head, it's never prudent for us to seem to presume what the outcome of an agenda item will be, right? And so my only point is that I heard that 2 of our campgrounds are accepting reservations starting May 15th, which is Friday, which is the same day that this amended public health order will be voted on by this Board of Health. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that we should tell those campgrounds that they have to cancel reservations for this weekend, but everyone should recognize that it's possible, although I do think it's unlikely given our conversation, it's possible that we would choose on Friday not to do that after we've had 2 days of input and comment. And so there's a risk to CPW that at Elkhead and Stagecoach, they may have to cancel those reservations at the last minute. And so that would be their decision. And like I said, I think given our conversation here, that's probably unlikely, but I'd just like to acknowledge that it is still possible that something might happen that would cause that to occur. And so just want to note that.
I think, Commissioner Melton, you have described a remotely possible unfortunate scenario that I do not see how we at Routt County can avoid.
And I mean, the other comment I would add is I think there's two ways that those two campgrounds could choose to deal with that. One is they could choose to not accept reservations until the 16th or until the 18th, or they could take the risk. And that's really up to them.
Commissioner Monger?
Yeah, I'm good. We're playing within the rules that we have. So I appreciate Commissioner Melton's comments there regarding the 15th and the rest. And yet we still have due process, as Commissioner Melton says as well. So, you know, I think it wasn't as simple as a wink and a nod, as I said. So, yeah, we need to make sure we doing the process right, and we have opportunity for other people to speak. And again, I think it'll give some time. And again, that risk on the 15th, whatever, that's going to kind of be up to them. But I think we've made the comments that we're pretty well supportive of this concept. So I didn't realize that we were going to be running against our own lodging order, which then does expire. And we still have, well, we're going to have a presentation at noon today from them as well, so in a half hour. So, which the rest of the campgrounds will be part, in essence, participating in or part of.
I have a question for Commissioner Melton. Beth, I think I heard you say that you were comfortable moving forward with a specific exemption for state facilities, and that we would be able to rely upon the mitigation protocols that are being issued to CPW by the state or within CPW, which would therefore obviate the need for our public health order to contain any kind of a mitigation protocol. Do I have that about right?
You did hear me say that. I would ask, I guess, what Chris's perception is of what guidance they're getting from the state. My comment was really that I feel more comfortable with state campgrounds opening prior to private campgrounds because of the oversight that they have from the state and because of our ability to work collaboratively with Chris on this.
So before Chris responds to that, the comment I would make is that it would certainly make our work quite a bit simpler if we could just amend the public health order and rely upon the state to take responsibility for the mitigation protocol on their properties.
So Tim, a suggestion I would make, and obviously we'll work with our legal staff on the exact wording, but I would think that we, rather than including the actual mitigation protocol in the public health order, there could just be a reference to reopening with appropriate mitigation protocols in place. And if the state doesn't have a reference, we have a reference in our other public health order about the types of mitigation measures. And obviously some of those will not apply to a campground, the ones that are designed for, you know, grocery stores and that kind of thing. But I imagine we'll be doing something similar with our lodging establishments when we have our discussion with them in a little bit here. So legal can probably advise us on whether the protocol, and I don't mean in this meeting, I mean as we move forward, on whether the protocol itself should be included in the order or just a reference to having appropriate mitigation measures in place would be sufficient.
Chris, would you like to respond to that?
I think I need to hear the question again from Commissioner Melton regarding the specific protocols, what you're looking for.
Yeah, my question is via Director Gibbs and via the state, so DNR and CPW, are you receiving some specifics from them about appropriate mitigation protocols at your campsites? If so, I imagine that those have been developed in coordination with CDPHE, and that was where my comments are. So I guess the question to you is, are you receiving some specific requirements from the state about how to safely reopen the campgrounds?
Yes, we are receiving specific requirements, and I think it's evolving and changing every day as well. It may not look exactly the same as what Routt County or what Moffett County has done, but we are receiving that. We're going to convene with all four of us managers after this meeting, hopefully, along with our folks in Grand Junction, and start working on this protocol specifically so that we can share that with you, hopefully by the end of business today, and be able to get some feedback if it's not suitable or up to what you consider the standard that you need.
So
Thank-
Tim, that would be in support of my previous comments that their state campgrounds are in a different category from private campgrounds because there is some oversight being provided by state agencies with regard to the health and safety of those campgrounds. And so that's where I feel a distinction is appropriate, and I would be supportive of that.
Commissioner Monger, any comments before I attempt to provide direction to legal staff?
No, I don't have any further comments, Tim. Thank you.
So, Eric, I believe that you've heard everything we've heard, and that I guess I have a question for you rather than direction. Do you feel like you have received the direction you need in order to prepare an amended public health order?
No, but we can fix that real quick, I think.
Okay.
Based on everything I've heard, I just want to remind everybody, we have two public health orders at play here. One is the lodging restriction, which I think, based on what I've heard, the easiest fix there would be to add camping on state lands. I'll probably want to flesh that out a little bit better, maybe specific to Colorado Parks and Wildlife properties. And just include that in the list of exceptions. As you may recall, there's a list of 5 already for lodging, but this one we could add for camping specifically. And I think that's all that needs to be done. The second public health order at play here, which is the one applicable to businesses and requires a mitigation protocol, it says that the mitigation protocol shall be substantially in the form as that which we had attached to the public health order. What that means is that they don't have to use the exact same mitigation protocol. If they provide something, whether that's via the state, and that should be reviewed locally, as Scott has and his folks have done for other businesses. I think that's all that needs to be done, quite frankly. And if you agree, that's what I would recommend.
I agree.
I agree. And Doug has put the thumbs up. He agrees.
Can I invite, please, Linnea to comment on
Please.
I apologize, to comment on what? It broke up.
Sorry about that. If you heard what I had said before, do you think you agree with that we amend the lodging order to carve out the exception that we talked about, and nothing else needs to be done in terms of the mitigation protocol? The business public health order mitigation protocol standards would still apply, but there's wiggle room there to allow CPW to present their own mitigation protocol.
Yes, I agree.
Very good. Then commissioners.
Mr. Corrigan, this is Craig. Can I make one more comment?
Sure, Craig, please.
I just want to clarify for everyone that CPW in state of Colorado does not own the land at Stagecoach. So as you're thinking through the wording, keep that in mind. Don't make the exception for state-owned lands or something along those lines, because we don't own the land. So
Do you have a
CPW
suggestion?
properties or something along those lines would be appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe that, commissioners, we have provided the appropriate direction to our legal staff. to prepare an amended public health order that we will consider on Friday afternoon, and that we've provided the information to CPW that they need in order to make their plans. Does anybody disagree with that?
I don't disagree. I just have one other comment. Obviously, we should make sure we'll be meeting at the Board of Health, and I know that Carrie and Dr. Harrington's schedules have been somewhat challenging. So I'd like to ask our staff that if Carrie and Dr. Harrington are not able to attend on Friday, that we give them adequate opportunity to provide their comments in writing so that we can consider them during that hearing.
Agreed.
So I just have one quick comment. I appreciate all you guys coming in and talking to us. And, you know, you guys, we don't need to remind you of the intensity or the importance of this thing and the importance of how you guys handle it. You'll be out there trailblazing for us. And so however you know, you guys can be the success story, and we're happy that you guys are willing to take it on and to do that. So good luck, and we trust that you guys will do a great job at it.
Great. Chris, and all of your folks, thank you very much for your presentation today, and we will move forward as described. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. Have a wonderful day.
You too. All right. It is 11:30. We are scheduled to convene as the Board of Health at 12 noon. What's the pleasure, commissioners? Would you like to continue in this work session, or would you like to adjourn until 12 p.m.?
I think we just have our regular, COVID-19 work session. So just if there's any items we need to discuss before then. I do have one thing I'd like to ask you about.
That'd be great, please.
Actually, two. So the first is just a comment. You know that we have that, or I'm participating, and I don't know if either of you are in the call with other tourism reliant counties this afternoon, and Dan Gibbs will be joining us for that call. And I'm curious to ask him, I just want to comment that I will ask him, with this direction from the state level in state parks, reopening for camping, is the governor intending to change his message about people recreating within 10 miles of their home? Because those two seem incongruent to me. And so I'm just curious where the state is headed on that. So just to mention that I want to ask him that question.
So you're expressing a concern about lack of clarity from our partners at the state level. Do I have that right?
Well, that's not exactly what I said, but you're probably not wrong. I mean, it just seems inconsistent. So I'm curious how they're planning to approach that inconsistency.
And that's a great point, and it's great that you'll have that opportunity to have that conversation with Director Gibbs this afternoon, and I certainly look forward to hearing his response to that.
And then I have so we had a meeting of the Complete Count Committee yesterday, and it went really well. I think that group is doing a great job. I'll probably, once Deanna puts together the minutes, we'll just share those with everyone so you know what's happening within that group. I don't think I have to go into all of it. But one question I have, and maybe this is a question, it's probably for Tim and also for Mark, just trying to figure out, we've kind of been trying to do census outreach efforts under the JIC. And I guess I just don't know if that really makes sense or not. I know we have Jessica Quigley helping to support those census outreach efforts, and then Deanna is also helping. But Jessica's sort of doing it under the JIC, and Deanna's been doing it under the commissioner's office. And I guess I'm just curious if anyone has any specific thoughts, and maybe this is more of a conversation once you see the notes about what was discussed yesterday, but it seems like a little bit of a disjointed effort, and it doesn't seem to me that it's actually related to emergency operations. So I guess my suggestion would be that we just move all of those efforts to one place. I don't know quite who heads that up or whatever, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we would be asking our JIC to work on that. It's not really an emergency operation function. So I don't know what your thoughts are, Tim, or.
So I mean, I hear what you're saying, Beth. I think the reason that it's been there is that that's where the resources have been.
Sort of. I mean, except Deanna, and part of it is that in talking with this group, I mean, everyone is engaging in their own census outreach efforts, which is the point of that complete count committee. Really what the need is, I think, from the county is kind of just coordination of those efforts. So creation of messages that can then be sent to that group, that can be sent out to everyone, etc. And I do think Deanna really is the lead on that. I guess just want to flag it as something I think we need to have more conversation about. I don't have an answer quite yet, but if you guys are all right with it, maybe I'll talk with Deanna in conjunction with Mark, and then also kind of understand what it is exactly that Jessica's been doing, and just put forth my suggestion about how we could streamline that a little bit better.
So I'd like to be on the record of being in favor of streamlining efforts.
Noted. Mark, do you have
any comments, Mark?
Kind of from the staffing standpoint?
Commissioners, I do, and I hope I don't go too far off the trail here a little bit. Speaking of state parks, one of the things that we're attempting to do, is I think that we have informed the commissioners of, is to streamline and improve and become more efficient in terms of what we're doing relative to the COVID website. Not only all the website maintenance, but also the dashboards and the expanded dashboards. So we're moving some resources around to do that. I will be very honest with you. We have come up with a patchwork plan, if you will. In other words, different people subbing in to do that. And it's not gone well within the last 24 to 36 hours. So we may need to go ahead and change that to a platform where we use somebody that is maybe a third party that has lots of experience with that Foursquare software, can do it very quickly, very efficiently, and then free up our folks for some other important duties and responsibilities. And I mention that because, of course, the person that's been trying to juggle all these things has been Deanna, and I know Kendra is very aware of that. So rather than maybe overload somebody, what I'd like to do is decide if we could maybe deploy some new resources on this. And yes, indeed, get some streamlining, but also make sure that we've got the right people to be able to carry this out with some good efficiency. So happy to have that conversation. Follow up today with both HR, the responsible people that oversee some of those people that would help us, and make sure that we get the right people there to help us going forward. So more than happy to follow up on that, commissioners, and I'll give you a follow up to that.
So Mark, it sounds like, based on what you said, and then in response to what I said, I guess my request would be just include in that the conversation about how we want to manage census outreach, and whether it stays under the guise of the JIC, whether it's our office, and right now it's kind of both. So just flagging that that's another area where we need some streamlining. And I can offline provide to you what was discussed in the complete count committee yesterday, sorry. Sure. And just explain kind of where I think would be best to head, just to identify what resources are needed in order to do that. And I don't think it's more resources than we have allocated to complete to census right now, but it's kind of just a realignment of those resources. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that as you have those staffing conversations, so that we can figure out what that looks like.
Sounds good, Beth. But if I can just, a takeaway for me and to pass along to everybody else, it sounds like the consensus from the commissioners would be maybe the JIC is not the best place to house our census outreach and our census effort right now. That maybe, and I know they're extremely busy with everything that's going on related to COVID. Maybe now is the time to say, hey, pull it out from underneath the JIC and let's get it in maybe a better position to be more efficient going forward. Is that a fair assessment from the commissioners to maybe move it away from the JIC at this point in time and see if we can find a better platform?
So
Well,
Doug,
I don't have a comment right now, so I guess we need to let you figure out how to do it. I'm going to be very opposed to spending any outside money, more outside money, when we're going into the second Great Depression here, and that, you know, to spending any more money. If we need to realign some resources and something like that, you know, I'm comfortable doing that, and I'm sure we still have staff that we can probably throw at this thing. And again, my fellow two commissioners are very sold on the census. I am not a true believer. So I just want to say that. I don't, but anyhow, so I don't want to spend a lot more money on it. I want to make sure we get it done and do it the best we can, but we're using internal resources the best we can.
Doug, thank you. Loud and clear, census, we won't use any outside resources. You bet. We will make sure we use existing staff to take care of it. Got it.
Well, now hold on. Here's
the one who speaks the loudest does not declare the consensus.
Here's my suggestion, Mark. I would go ahead and put together a plan, the best possible plan that you can for moving forward to address the issues that have been presented. And if you actually believe that there's justification for expending additional resources, include that and show us what the cost is, and then we can assess whether or not we're actually interested in devoting those resources. I am extremely sympathetic to what Commissioner Monger just said about we need to watch every nickel and dime, but that does not mean that we would automatically rule out expending resources if we truly believe they were justified.
You bet.
I agree with all of that. And the only other thing I would say about census is that there's not a lot out there, but there are outside resources available to support census outreach efforts. And so if it were identified like, hey, we can't really use Deanna's time or Jessica's time to support census, but maybe we should be looking at grant opportunities to support census outreach. You know, if there were, in my opinion, I know there is census money out there, some, not a ton. That would be if we wanted to, if we thought it was warranted. I wouldn't want us to spend general fund or county money on that, but if we thought that it made sense, there might be other resources available. And I would say definitely we need to Tim's point, we need to watch every nickel and dime on these things, but with regards to the emergency response, there's probably a little more justification for expending resources than for other things that are not emergency response.
So Mark, are you able to amalgamate all those mixed messages into moving forward with some kind of a proposal?
I am, Tim. Thank you. And thanks for the feedback from everybody. And let me just clarify. I didn't want to give the wrong impression that some third-party resources would go to, the only thing we've identified for those right now is that Foursquare software platform for the website, the COVID website, not anything census related. So with that clarification, yes,
right?
Yes,
Smart,
Tim.
the emergency response.
Right, you bet, for the emergency response. So, but I will give a summary back to the commissioners of exactly what our platform will be going forward. and would be happy to provide that information for everybody's comfort.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
So I have a related question, Tim, if I could. And so Beth,
Sure.
Tim, maybe Mark, maybe you guys know a little bit more. So what's happening with our dashboard and the rest? And so I don't follow that so well. And so, but then we're getting a lot of complaints and thoughts, the thing's not being, it's not accurate and responsive. And then even Emmy commented 2 days ago that she wasn't happy with it, and I was confused. If she was confused, I was really confused, and so I was just. So have we got that kind of going and fixed up, even on our COVID thing? So I'd ask that to some.
Doug, the easiest answer for everybody is we are in fact working on it, and we've got a lot of people, including Emmy and Mo and Robin, that are focused on that to try and make sure that we take care of what has been the glitches so far and some of the problems that we've had in terms of inserting the correct data and make sure everything lines up. So it's been a very high priority for us this week. I won't go any further detail than that. It may be something that we want to get a little more detail from Robin or Mo, but absolutely we're aware of the issues and we're working on it right now to make sure that those are rectified.
Thank you for that. As you know, I've been the recipient of a lot of those concerned citizen emails. So I really appreciate you guys following up and taking care of that. I think the public wants and deserves transparent, easy to understand data. And so thank you for working on that.
Yeah.
I'd agree. Thank you. Yeah. And again, like I say, I kind of have those numbers in the back of my brain, and they have kind of a flow chart on them too. But anyhow, but I appreciate when making sure we're transparent now to the public and a workable system. So I don't know, and I wouldn't understand even if I knew what the problems are. So I'll trust that you guys can all get it figured out. And our public can be informed. So thank you.
That's all I have, Tim.
Doug, anything else? Okay, let's go ahead and adjourn. We will reconvene at 12 o'clock.
It's called a recess, Tim.
Oh, we're going to take a recess? Okay.
But
no,
the meeting will stay open, right?
Yeah, we can just leave the meeting open and we'll take a recess. And when we come back, we will reconvene as the Board of Health.
At 12 o'clock, correct?
12 o'clock.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much. We'll see you at
Great.
12.
Thank you.
So it is 12 p.m. and we, the Routt County Commissioners, are convening as the Board of Health, and we are here today to hear some recommendations from the Lodging Association and the Restaurant Association about plans for recommendations for reopening their business sectors. I want to make sure before we get started that we have representatives from public health here today. Dr. Harrington and Carrie Landreau, are you on the line? Well, I guess ideally.
Saw Carrie's name, but
I'm here, Commissioner Corrigan.
Great, perfect. Do you know if Dr. Harrington will be joining us?
He will be as well.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And before we get started, just a couple of quick comments. We are operating on a really tight time schedule today, and I apologize to everyone for that. But this meeting must conclude by 1 p.m. So by way of providing some direction to Kara and anyone else that will be making a presentation, you should assume, and correctly, I believe, that the commissioners have carefully read the two proposals that were provided as part of the packet. So if you could limit your presentation to making comments that would really be beneficial to the public in general terms about what we're considering here today, and that would allow us to have plenty of time for questions from the commissioners. And then one other comment I'd just like to note for everybody today: we live in tumultuous times. Work for everybody in the community. So thank you for allowing me to make those opening remarks. And having said that, Kara, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner Corrigan. I appreciate it. And thank you all for the work that you've been doing. And we will try to make it as brief as possible. I just have a few comments that I'd like to open with, and then we will dive into a few highlights of each of the proposals, and we'll start with restaurants. But I wanted to acknowledge that I know that the county has received some feedback from some business owners feeling as though there wasn't support for business owners. I know the work that you guys have been doing, but I'd say today marks a very critical point at which you have the ability to clearly state your industries, but by no means just only these two industries. You're well aware of how much we all rely on one another for our economic vitality. The success of these two industries equate to the success of retail and activity companies. And the success of those equate to the success of professional services, real estate, construction, and utilities. And the ability for the county and local municipalities to continue to provide the services that you do and do so well rely on the success of the business community. I feel really confident that we have outlined reopening plans that keep our community's health at the forefront while providing the opportunity for economic recovery to begin. These proposals were created with input from many local business owners, analysis of national protocol, and work being done in other similar locations within the state. Last year, the accommodations and food service industries together employed over 2,500 people in Routt County. Retail was next highest employment sector, and they were at nearly 1,700 people, so close to 1,000 people less. Again, just want to thank you all for the work that you've done, the partnerships that we've had, and your openness to receiving these two reopening proposals today. With that, I want to introduce Nick Sharp. He is the president of the Steamboat Springs chapter of the Colorado Restaurant Association. He will dive in to present the details of the restaurant reopening plan, as you guys have already reviewed, but just hit some highlights. And I wanted to make sure that we addressed the start time. I know that we included a May 29 restart. We acknowledge that there is work that needs to be done to apply for the waiver from CDPHE. But we also want to stress that if there is any opportunity to open up sooner, that would be absolutely incredible and greatly appreciated. And Memorial Day just feels really, like a pivotal point, and it would be incredible to strive to reopen for that weekend, if at all possible. And please know that we are here to help make that happen in any way that we can. And with that, I will hand it over to Nick.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the time, and commissioners, I really appreciate your attention today. I know you have full dockets in lots of arenas, and so your time is valuable, and I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. Again, I am Nick Sharp. I am the president of the local chapter of the Colorado Restaurant Association, and we're here today to present you with our plan to ask you to apply for a waiver at the state level to allow steamboat restaurants, about county restaurants, to reopen as hopefully as early as May 22nd. We realized that in our documents provided, we indicated May 29th, like Kara told you. It's come to light that if the turnaround time for this waiver can be increased, then the opportunity of the weekend starting on the 22nd would be fantastic. We have created a mitigation protocol that you see here in these documents that should act as guidance for the restaurant industry to operate in the interim period between when we reopen restaurants and when the state allows for broader reopening sometime date to be decided. So this is a protocol to get us from 22nd to whenever the state gives us further and probably more in-depth guidance. It's important to open up by stating that we know that public safety and the health of our guests and our employees is of the utmost importance during this reopening and during the launch of our businesses. And we recognize as a restaurant industry that there must be limitations put in place in how we operate in order to safely serve our community. And we are prepared to perform at a high level in this regard in order to gain the trust of our community and our customers. There's a few key areas that I would like to highlight that help understand why this is so important for our business community. To help understand why the dates of getting this going quickly is important for our business community. Reopening before June will allow operators to utilize their remaining payroll protection funds and utilize those funds in a way to properly train our employees to the new protocols. Opening prior to the expiration of those funds, which if you don't know, most restaurants' funds will expire somewhere in the beginning of June, between the 6th and 9th is what I'm gathering from operators. We will have the ability to labor up during that period to train appropriately, to make quick adjustments to spaces and protocols. And once that funding expires and we are not given this extra money, it will be difficult, and we will have to control labor in a manner that will make it harder to overcome all of the issues and the ideas. So we really urge that in order to implement our standard operating procedures, the new ones that we've created here, we want as much funding so that we can bring our people in early and do appropriate training so that they're well versed by the time we actually see customers. Operating with social distancing guidelines in place will take some getting used to for restaurants. Everybody's space is designed differently, and it will take us a little trial and error to iron out the kinks, a little well, what if we put that table there and we move the entrance this way? So before our visitors start arriving inevitably this summer, we all want that ability to practice, and opening early gives us that ability prior to having too many guests in town. Very importantly, we recognize that restaurants are social environments, and we understand it's very important to regulate our performance and our processes, especially in times of a pandemic. In order to safely open our businesses, we must limit how close customers can be to each other and to the staff, and we must limit how close the staff can be to each other. You'll notice in this proposal that we're not asking for limitations based on an occupancy percentage. We are asking for limitations based on physical distancing. We feel that occupancy percentage limits is sort of one-size-fits-all approach, and it doesn't really accommodate what some restaurants will need in order to open their doors. Occupancy load certificates are based largely on egress and square footage, and that during an emergency, they're very important to not be overloaded. But in the eyes of a pandemic and with proximity from guest to guest or guest to a staff member, that maybe it's not a great baseline to use. We're also working with the city to create new spaces, and hopefully with some allowance to expand table spacing out to sidewalks or perhaps lawns or additional patio settings. Occupancy load doesn't lend itself to that calculation very well. So I urge us not to use that if at all possible. Also, just recently, California has helped us set a precedent with this concept in granting openings with this kind of flexibility based solely on social distancing and our ability to partition spaces off between customers and not on occupancy. The Colorado Restaurant Association at the Denver level is also lobbying the governor's office to keep this as a primary protocol. And so we'd like to stay with that as we submit this waiver. Reservations in some restaurants are the name of the game. In others, until now, it's not the policy that they use. However, going forward, I would imagine that most restaurants, if they're able, will utilize a reservations only or a highly quantified reservations policy so that they can really control the traffic in their establishments. Now, it won't work for everybody. So some restaurants or some diner style facilities or cafe style facilities will have to pivot in order to accomplish guest seating in their spaces. And there's a few that you can think of in town that might need to put some tables outside because they won't have a place where customers can come to dine. Perhaps most important to note in this conversation and in this presentation is that restaurants are already poised incredibly well to succeed in safety and sanitation measures. Unlike most industries, sanitation is not new for us. Where else besides at a hospital do employees clean and sanitize the space that a guest takes up between every guest? We're trained on an ongoing basis through accredited programs provided by the country and provided by the state. And we're also held to a very high standard by the county environmental health team, reviewed and inspected frequently. So to do the things that we've indicated we're capable of doing in our mitigation protocol, it's not a very far turn of our dial in order to up our standards and become more safe than we were 3 months ago.
Nick, I'm going to interrupt you in the interest of time. I appreciate your presentation. I want to make sure I leave enough time for public health comment and questions from the commissioners. Commissioners, would you like to ask some questions and then turn it over to public health, or would you like to hear from public health first?
I'd like to hear from public health first. I don't have any questions.
That's fine with me, and I don't think I really have questions, just some comments on what's being recommended here and maybe some suggestions about what I'd like to see in assuming we go forward with this. So yeah, public health first would be great.
Carrie?
You know, that, and I guess, you know, we need to make sure we understand that, I mean, everybody understands on the call and everywhere that this isn't a request to us. This is a request to us to champion the request for the exemption. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. So thank you.
To that point, maybe it would be good to start with just a very brief explanation from Carrie about what the variance process entails, just for the benefit of the public, because I think the commissioners know, and I described that on a call with the restaurants yesterday, but maybe we could ask Carrie to just start with a very brief explanation of that process.
Sure. So essentially, I just went through this actually with Moffat County as the director over there. And what happens is there is an assessment of some of the criteria of the suppression of the virus, testing, containment, how vulnerable populations will be at risk, the healthcare system as far as their capability to handle a surge. That whole conversation as far as the metric and data collection takes place. And in conjunction with that, then it has to be buy-in from the hospital and also from public health on those criteria being met. And over the last 14 days, has there been a decrease in disease prevalence? And then from that point, once that discussion happens, then there is a portal, essentially a variance request portal from CDPHE, and the request itself, along with any supporting documentation, I go in there and manually put the supporting documentation and the variance request into this portal, and then it is sent up to CDPHE, and then there's a pretty extensive committee. I believe there's 5 members, which are the epidemiologist at state, the legal team, somebody representing the legal team, several other players that review it. It passes the initial first step if it's acceptable, and if it is determined that the prevalence of disease is such that it could be considered for further review. Then it goes next to Jill Ryan's desk, and then from Jill Ryan's desk, it goes to the governor. And so I can tell you that the call that I was on yesterday, they have a significant backlog of these variance requests. And so they were estimating the time for review was between 5 and 7 days. That being said, the Moffat County, we still haven't just yet, we still have not heard back on our variance request there. So just keep that in mind on the timeline of these. I just want everybody to be realistic about how long it takes to turn these around.
Any questions for Carrie? Commissioners?
Not on the variance process. I assume Dr. Harrington and Carrie will comment on the request from the restaurants as well.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
I don't either. On the variance request process at this time. Carrie and Dr. Harrington, if you're on the line, would you care to make any comments upon? And I'm assuming that you've had an opportunity to see the request from the Colorado restaurant, or from our restaurant association.
I guess one of the questions I would have back to you is it an appropriate time to talk about disease prevalence in the community? I was going to share with you just some disease prevalence data, because I think that does play into this variance request. So if now is a good time, if later is a good time.
No, now would be a good time.
Okay. So as far as for the trending of cases over the past 14 days, we have seen the trend in positive cases decrease. Positive case rates per total tested has decreased, and hospitalizations have also decreased, which is in our favor as a community. In addition, as far as the difference, since the Safer at Home order went into effect, we definitely have seen a decrease in detected disease prevalence since that order went into effect. And Emmy is putting up some graphs, which maybe Dr. Harrington, after I go through a few data sets, then maybe you can talk about those briefly. But as far as the test administration, that is a big part of requesting a variance, is what is the capacity for the community to do testing, and second to that, receive the results in a timely fashion to make sure we can do contact tracing. And the total of tests administered between April 27th and May 11th is 310 tests that have been administered. And so we have had successful community testing sites in addition to UC Health and other private providers providing testing opportunities. As far as the community testing, we plan to continue that throughout the month of May and then into June as necessary, just to make sure there is an opportunity to keep an eye on these data sets as restrictions are lifted. And in addition to that, for contact tracing, we continue to have the contact team working on cases as they reveal themselves. One of the things I would make a comment on is that aside from the Casey's Pond cases, with the community cases, as we have seen the Safer at Home through the governor in place, and as we've seen these restrictions in place, we in the public health world have seen less close contacts identified, which intuitively makes sense because people haven't been out and about as much. And so I think moving forward into lifting restrictions potentially, as these restrictions are lifted, we would see additional close contacts identified by the close contact or the contact tracing team as people begin moving around more. As far as the positives and negatives, we did not identify as a community, we have not identified positives this week. And our last community positive was April 30th. And that being said, I just want to notify the community and the commissioners that we are doing a significant amount of testing this week in the vulnerable populations, that being the Haven, Casey's Pond, San Rockridge, and Moffat County. And we expect that there is the possibility that cases could be identified within those vulnerable populations, just because historically, as we all know, Casey's Pond has had the disease, had a bulk of the disease prevalence in the community. So just be realistic when you're looking at these numbers, that there is a possibility this week that some cases could creep into these data sets. That the last known Casey's Pond positive was on April 26th. And we have not had any hospitalizations within the past week. And then our last death, unfortunately, related to COVID-19 that transpired was on May 1st. So if that puts it into context for the local data, we are currently sitting at 20,157 cases in the state of Colorado. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Harrington if Dr. Harrington wants to talk just for a bit about these graphs that are in front of you.
Yes, I don't think I need to add much except to repeat maybe what Carrie said just for emphasis. We are now approaching a 2-week mark without any new cases. The apparent prevalence of the disease in our community appears to be quite low right now. And certainly by our detection measures, the lowest that it's been certainly in quite some time, well, frankly, since we kind of started this process back in March. So that's a good news note. I don't think I need to really say much more about it. Carrie mentioned we've done 310 tests in the past 2 weeks. And again, our last, just for emphasis, our last community positive was April 30th. So we are kind of getting at the 2-week mark now where we appear to not be detecting new cases. Our community testing has not been full. So clearly the number of people out there with symptoms has even been low. That's all I would say right now.
So real quick before I have the other commissioners ask questions of public health, did you, Dr. Harrington and Carrie, have an opportunity to take a look at the proposal from the Restaurant Association? And do you have any comments to make about the efficacy of the mitigations that they're suggesting?
I just have a couple of questions, and I think perhaps Scott Kalman is also poised to talk to specifics on this. I just would ask that there be some clarification around the cleaning. I would reflect that that's different than the CDC guidelines for the cleaning if there's identification of the positive COVID test. So as far as having questions about the process and the mitigation efforts that are proposed. I don't know if we want to go through those line by line. There are some questions or clarifying comments that I would like to ask the restaurants, but I don't know if now's the time or if we do that on a more individual basis with the restaurants.
Honestly, I don't believe we have time for that today. And I appreciate the Scott's on the line, but with the limited time that we have, I think we're going to have to defer some of those specific questions to, and I think we can probably carve out some time over the next day or two to address those, and possibly some of that can be done in writing. I think I'm, given the limited time that we have, and having heard from both the Restaurant Association and from Public Health, I think I'd like to just turn it back over to the commissioners for quick comments and questions before we move on to talking with the Lodging Association. Doug, Beth?
I'll defer to Beth for now. So yeah, I'll take my shot in a minute. So I have some more broader questions maybe for Public Health. Thank you.
You guys always make me go first, but it's okay. I'll do it. I want to just really thank the restaurants for working on this. I know that I met with them last week and then again yesterday. And last week, they weren't sure whether a variance request was required or not. And so they've pulled this together pretty quickly. And I want to really commend the work that they've done. And I think some of the things that Nick said should really be emphasized, which is that the restaurant industry is used to implementing health and safety and mitigation. The social distancing part is the part that they're not used to. And I appreciate their commitment to doing that. And Nick made a comment on the call I was on yesterday that he didn't make in this meeting, which is that I really appreciated, which is they also have a pretty unique ability to put people in place and have them stay there. As opposed to other types of establishments. You know, they put people at a table that is 6 feet away from another table and they stay there. And so I think that's also unique in their ability to manage this adequately. I do have some specific questions about the protocols that were put in place, or that they're recommending. But like you said, Tim, I think really today we can determine whether we're supportive of moving in this direction, and that those specific details can be worked out as we work with Public Health to put a variance request together. So with that, I guess I would say that I'm very supportive of this, given I'm really happy and excited to hear what Carrie and Brian are telling us about disease prevalence in our community. And I think that's a clear indication that the community has done a great job of social distancing and of doing what needed to be done to control this disease. And I wholeheartedly believe that our community will continue to do what's needed to stay safe, and will be supportive of what's needed to stay safe as we have continued reopening. So that's really assuring and honestly really exciting to me. I think it's great to see that. So I think Memorial Day would be a great target. I know what Carrie is, I hear what Carrie is saying about the timeline from CDPHE. And so I think we may or may not be able to hit that target, but I think it's worth trying. And then the only other just clarification that I think would be important today, and maybe we don't have the answer today, but to just put forth, is that I do think we're going to need to be really clear on definitions here about who is and isn't allowed to reopen for in-house dining, because we may have, you know, there are sort of colloquial terms for a bar, a restaurant, a coffee shop, a brewery, right? There are licensing categories for those that don't necessarily align. So I guess I just want to flag that we really need to make sure that we get our definitions straight here as we move forward. But I'm very supportive of us accepting the Restaurant Association's proposal and working together with them to move forward.
Thank you. Doug?
Okay, yep, a whole bunch of comments. I'm very supportive of moving forward here as well. And again, I've been championing the fact that we don't know restaurants. Public health maybe knows restaurants, but they know public health. And so, I mean, and our environmental health. So I've been championing all along the concept of having industries, specific industries come up to the table and tell us how they're going to solve the situation and how they are going to move forward. So I've read through it and I don't know anything about other than I just read it. So I think that it's a very good process and I want to get out there and make it look like, it may not look like, but actually being moving forward and trying to figure out how we can open things up a little bit. Again, in my mind, I don't think a zero risk is a concept here. There is no zero risk. So we know we're going to have some risk, and we talk about it all the time. It's risk management, and hopefully we use best management practices and the protocols that are being proposed by the people that run these industries, that they can move forward and take care of our guests as well as our own native population. I've also been in favor of opening up before the lodging ban went off too, so we could have some phasing type of and opening up to our local residents for some, if the restaurant people felt they could financially pull it off, because I realize there's startup costs and whether they can do that or not, I don't know. So that's their thing, but I think we need to provide them an opportunity. I guess my only question I have, I'm a double thumbs up here. My only question is and again, so Carrie, you've helped with and you don't need to answer my question right now, but the commissioners, will need to figure out how in the process and who's going to be responsible for filing that exemption request if we decide to move forward with that. So whether that's going to be in conjunction with public health, whether that's, and again, I think Brian and Carrie probably have already undertaken that with my neighbors to the west here, but so we want to, I guess I'll just leave it there. I'm very in favor of moving forward, and it might be all for naught, but I think we need to make it an effort, and I really do think it champions in some phasing happening here.
Thank you, Doug. Again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to make a lot of comments. I support pretty much everything my fellow commissioners have said. I'm in support of moving forward with the exemption request. I have a quick question for Nick. Nick, these protocols that have been developed have not just been developed here locally. I'm assuming that these have been developed with the assistance of the statewide association. And I'm also hoping that my next assumption is correct, is that if and when we see the governor's loosening and allowance of opening of restaurants, that will be a very similar set of guidelines that the governor will be using?
That was the primary goal in creating this mitigation protocol, is to try to be lock in step with what we're seeing in other communities, and especially coming out of the governor's office, with influence from the Colorado Restaurant Association and their lobby, as well as all the inside tracks that we have to understand what they are trying to build. So we kept it as close as possible.
Great, thank you for that, Nick. And then this is actually just a question for consideration. And I think, commissioners, we're going to need to take some time tomorrow during our COVID-19 work session to maybe talk about some specifics that we don't have time for today. And one of the problems that jumps right out at me is that our public health order with the workplace mitigation plan that requires mask wearing by customers is going to be untenable in the restaurant context. So we'll have to.
Tim, answer, that's not true. The public health mitigation protocol, if you'll remember, we amended it, and that language was changed to read that masks are required except when the nature of the business would not allow masks to be worn.
Great.
So we're completely on that, but I think that you may be incorrect. I think
okay.
It's okay.
And frankly, it's not the first time that I've been incorrect. And then the last comment I'm going to make is that I'm going to echo Commissioner Monger's comments that none of this is without risk. It's actually likely as we move forward through these different stages of reopening that we will see some spike in the number of cases, and we'll just have to be cognizant of that and manage it as best we can. So with that, and with the little time that's remaining to us, I would propose that we move on to the discussion of the lodging industry. And I think that what staff is hearing from us is that we will be giving direction to move forward with an exemption request to support the Lodging Association's recommendations. Do I have that right?
Restaurant Association.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from the Lodging Association
Right.
yet.
I'm sorry. I meant to be specific to the Restaurant Association.
Can I just weigh in on process there? I believe that I heard Carrie say that she, as the public health director, is responsible for this variance request. So then I would suggest that rather than having the three commissioners try to hash out the specifics of what needs to be in that request, we should have Carrie and Dr. Harrington identify the timeline that would be appropriate for them to put together some things based on these recommendations from the Restaurant Association. And I'm sure they can work with Scott and with Nick to figure out what that looks like and then bring it back to us. I think they should be the starting point, not us, in my opinion. And we should ask them what their schedule will allow for.
Let's go ahead and ask them that.
Yeah, I just want to comment on process here. I candidly have to say, Carrie and I are finding our plates quite full. Doing things, I might ask that Friday would be a quick time for us to juggle that with other things. I might ask that maybe we look at a Monday timeline. I appreciate the desire to move briskly on this and that we don't need to unnecessarily delay things. But our administrative department of two may be a little stretched thin. So I might ask if that's one further discussion after this meeting we can have maybe with the Restaurant Association and others just to decide on that. We're already involved trying to help the Moffat County put theirs in, and I know we need to deal with that, and we'll learn from both those processes. I think the commissioners can give us their sense of how they want this to go, and then we can, Carrie and I will work on that letter draft and the supporting materials, which the Restaurant Association here locally has given us, I think, a lot of the helpful materials for that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to just make sure that we are offering staff, even, Chamber has offered staff and the Restaurant Association. So I don't know, a collaborative effort on how we can move forward on, I don't want the administration, the bureaucracy of the whole thing to hold us up. We're going to have enough of that when it hits the state level. So however, we talked about that earlier, however we can figure out, so Mark's on the phone too. So, if we can throw a few people at it, know how to write forms, and again, I just want to not be administration holding the thing up too.
So could I suggest that maybe Dr. Harrington and Carrie work with Kara to assemble an appropriate team to put together this request? Would that work for you, Carrie and Brian?
I would ask that Scott also be involved in that because his team is critical in all of this.
Well, it's your team, so you put Scott on it.
Hey, if Scott is smiling, which I see that he
looks like he's smiling.
So yes, let's include him, please.
Great. Are we ready to move on to the recommendations from the Lodging Association?
I am. I just want to make sure that Nick doesn't have any other comments he wants to make before we move on from restaurants.
There was one more I just wanted to chime in on really quick. I know that we noted it in our documentation, but the goal of this is to have a plan to move forward with. And the hope is that the ask is that if there is something that becomes out that is more lenient at the state level, that we will default to what is more lenient. We want to make sure that there is a game plan in place so that restaurants can move forward. But we also acknowledge that this has been a really tricky to navigate and we don't want to wait. But we do want you to know that if something happens at the state level that is more lenient than what we've proposed, we would like to have that discussion with you to defer to the state orders.
Take that to the team.
Got it.
Carrie can help you. Go figure out
Nick,
what
I
that looks
jumped
like.
in.
Okay.
Do you have anything else?
I don't have anything else. Thanks for your time this morning. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Nick.
For your work on this.
All right, Kara, let's move on to the lodging industry. I think that this is going to be a somewhat less complicated conversation, or at least I hope so. So go ahead, Kara.
Thank you. Yes, and I just also want to acknowledge that, you know, the work that we've done with the Lodging Association in partnership with all of you, county commissioners and Board of Health, has been a great example of partnerships and all of you listening to specific industries and business owners. So thank you for that. And with that, I again feel really confident in the plan that we have presented to you today. I know in some various meetings I've mentioned, but I just wanted to reiterate today that there are other businesses outside of lodging that have conveyed to me that it doesn't make sense for them to open until we have the ability to invite visitors back. So again, it's not just about the Lodging Association, it's about so many more businesses, employees, our neighbors, and our friends. So with that, I will introduce Barbara Robinson, the chair of the Lodging Association, to hit on a few highlights of the lodging reopening plan.
Thank you. And with me is also Larry Michaud, our past lodging chair. So again, I'm Barbara Robinson. And thanks for the opportunity to present the safe return measures. The Steamboat Springs Lodging Association has been very supportive of all public health orders. Matter of fact, some of our properties even closed voluntarily before the order was in place. We are committed to welcome visitors back to the Yampa Valley in the safest possible way for our community, our guests, and our employees, following appropriate public health guidance. Cleanliness is one of the pillars of hospitality, and following strict cleaning guidelines is second nature. Made even easier with proven national guidelines presented by the American Hotel Association in their Stay Safe COVID-19 initiative, and made available to all Steamboat properties, as well as COVID-19 cleaning standards from the Vacation Rental Management Association, specific for vacation rental properties, and again, all to combat the spread of COVID-19. In other parts of Colorado, lodging is considered an essential service, so the model to be open safely is already out there, and it has been successful in other communities. As well as in Steamboat, the essential travel hosted locally has not created a problem, and good protocols are already in place. June is not a busy month for lodging. Our occupancy was below 40% last year, and with most events canceled and a very cautious traveler, we see us more in the 15 to 20% range of occupancy. It might be worth mentioning that we might appear to look busier on weekends as Highway 40 hotels are more visible, but the bed base is on the mountain and the condominiums have a much lower occupancy. We believe that about 75% of Steamboat hotel rooms and rental properties are managed professionally and are included in our occupancy projections. Past surveys have shown 7 to 10% of our visitors are RV tent camping. 5 to 6% are staying in their second home. So by adding this together, this would account for as much of the 25% of the non-managed and perhaps provide more comfort to the Board of Health. As a country, we are entering a phase in which we have to learn to live with the virus. As we plan to ease into reopening June 1st, the better for us to prepare and be prepared for busier times to come and for the ski season. June 1st is a logical date for us to open. If we could earn the board's agreement for that date, we ask that you please give us possibly an answer today, but no later than May 18th, so that we can finalize our mitigation plans and hire our staff. That is it. I'm wrapping up to be on time.
Thank you, Barbara. Appreciate that. Commissioners, once again, would we like to hear comments from public health before we ask questions? Yes. Again, Carrie and Dr. Harrington, would you please weigh in on this request?
Yes, I mean, I think that the lodging's tied in with the other issues, restaurants and all that, just in terms of how things are going to function here in our community. We can't probably be at a lower detection level than we are right now in terms of where the disease is. So I think this is an appropriate time to be talking about both of these. I will put it out there that I do wonder what we're going to see with the disease over the course of the summer as we open all these things up. But I have confidence in our community to continue to do the disease mitigation efforts that have proven to be effective. And if they do so, I think that can allow us to go ahead and do this. So I mean, I don't voice any direct opposition, and I appreciate that the restaurant and the lodging industry have been thoughtful and collaborative and trying to work with the bigger community at large.
Thank you. Carrie?
I agree with all of Dr. Herring's comments.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions and comments? Doug has to go first.
Okay, good.
Beth went first last time, so I'm going to go first. So questions. So I guess, you know, not all these lodgings are equal. So, and I guess, you know, I really appreciate the professional, you know, of what the Lodging Association is talking about and what Barbara mentioned and the rest. I am still going to be a little bit concerned about, you know, and we're you know, all of this stuff is brainwashed into me. I mean, Dr. Harrington and Carrie Ladrow have done a good job. I can actually speak some of the speak. So, but, you know, so cleaning protocols and all that stuff. So I guess, you know, I'm very supportive of, you know, when we have those cleaning protocols at the, you know, that we know that people are going to be cleaning the rooms up after they get left and they're going to be sanitizing them and the rest. I guess I am a little bit worried about a blanket, okay, yes, when we're talking about, and I see Robin Cragen's on the phone as well, but he's just another piece of that too. We still have some private nightly rentals in the city as well. And I guess, you know, it might be a time that we, you know, might need to partner with the city, because the city actually has a registration for these nightly rentals. And so I am, again, I'm going to be a little concerned about the nightly rentals. Just, well, we're just shuttering in another guest and we're shuttering out a guest and shuttering in a new guest without knowing that they're going to have the adequate, proper cleaning protocol, you know, and the mom and pop nightly rentals and the rest. And maybe I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong in that, but I feel good about the professionalism of our lodging industry. I just want to make sure we're taking care of all the things. We're going to, and again, we're going to be asked right now to move forward with an exemption request on this as well too. And again, so I'm not quite exactly sure what date that was, but I'll leave it at that. That's all my comments.
I'm going to use chairman's privilege to go next, and then Beth, we'll let you wrap up this time. My question is for Kara. Kara, what does 50% occupancy of lodging facilities in Steamboat translate into numbers of people in town?
So those are estimates. You know, we take a sample of the lodging properties to put those data points together. I don't know the exact number, but I think we are at about 17,000 pillows, and that's within Steamboat Springs. But that doesn't always correlate. You know, somebody could book a 2-bedroom condo and have 6 people in it. They could have 2 people in it. So it's very much an estimate, which is why we no longer put those numbers down. You know, the chamber used to provide this many people are going to be driving into Steamboat at this weekend, and that's just way too hard of a number to dial in unless we had somebody, a toll booth, checking people coming in. So those are the number of units, those are the number of pillows, and then the number of units that would be booked.
So one could estimate, we're putting a emphasis on the word estimate, that if we were at 50% occupancy, we might have 8,000 people in town. Okay, and then my next question is for Barbara. Barbara, I see that you have not proposed any limitation on percentages of occupancy, such as, say, 50% limitation. Would you care to speak to that, Barbara?
Yeah, we have discussed that, of course, as a group. And because our inventory is so varied with condos and homes, besides the small number of hotel rooms that we have, it's just very difficult to set a percentage because of the individual types of units we have. Because June is not a month where occupancy is even an issue, we feel this gives us 30 days at least before the summer starts to where occupancy could be a concern, or the number of people. But it is mainly the challenge because we have this varied inventory to set a percentage to that.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm going to close with my comments and then turn it over to Commissioner Melton. So I've been supportive of lifting or allowing our prohibition on short-term rentals to expire at the end of the month, and I have not heard anything that would change my mind at this point in time. I would, however, like to echo Dr. Harrington's comments that we don't know what we don't know right now. With luck and with good mitigation protocols and our citizens continuing to do the great job that they've done with social distancing and observing other mitigations, with luck, we will not see a spike in the number of cases. However, I think that we just all need to be cognizant of that possibility, and everybody needs to keep working really hard, because if these numbers spike dramatically, there can be little doubt about what the response will be from the state and potentially from us. So my advice is let's try to move forward with this, and let's make sure we do a good job with it. Commissioner Melton?
Thanks. I would echo support. Obviously, Barbara, you know, I've been participating with the lodging industry in conversations for several weeks, and I've been really appreciative of the level of support we've received from the Lodging Association for the need to prohibit lodging in order to control visitation to Routt County. And I've reiterated multiple times that that is the intent, has been the intent and the purpose. So with regards to individual, you know, the cleaning protocols and the safety within the lodging establishments, I don't have any questions about that. I think that you all will do a great job of making sure that people are safe while they're within your establishments. And obviously the question is about visitation and what that looks like. Dr. Harrington has made it really clear to us that that's one of the biggest points of risk for our community is bringing in new cases from outside. And so I would just say that I really appreciate your commitment to communication to visitors about these health and safety protocols, who to call if they do get sick while they're in town, what to do, those kinds of things, because I think that's going to be a big challenge. And so anything you can do to help with that, I think it will be really critical to maintaining the health and safety of the community as we move forward. So thank you for your commitment to that. I do have just a couple of specific considerations that I think we need to make. Doug alluded to this. Our public health order covers several different types of establishments, many of which, as you said, are addressed here. But then it also considers camping. It also considers I never know how to refer to these, but the type of VRBOs that are in a person's house or, you know, adjacent to their home, that's just a single residential kind of setting. So as we move forward, I think we just need to make sure that we know that all types of lodging are not covered by this proposal from the Lodging Association, and just make sure that we have answers to those questions, specifically with regards to the fact that certain types of short-term rentals have been ordered closed under the state order. And I don't know what the state orders, what the timeline is for the state on amending that. So I'm not sure, honestly, how that impacts some of these establishments. And I know, Barbara, we talked about that on a Lodging Association call, that the language in the state order, so I just a point of awareness, I guess, on that we need to just make sure we know that. The only thing I didn't see addressed in here that I would have some questions about are the common areas within hotels, like a pool. I don't know how many of our hotels have pools or lobbies, and kind of how gatherings of guests might be managed or avoided. So I guess I would maybe request an addition of some language that addresses that, unless it's here and I missed it, and you could alert me to that. And then the only other thing is that there were some requests with regard to the site mitigation plan. I think we can follow up on those as we go forward, but I don't believe that an amendment to our third public health order would be required in order to accommodate the two requests that are being made by the Lodging Association. But I'm not an attorney. Those are just my 2 cents on that. I don't believe that the order has a requirement for employees not to travel in and out of the county. It's more of a request or a recommendation to limit that travel to the extent possible. We know that for construction, that's been the case. And then I believe that the requirement of posting someone at the door to monitor people coming in, not all of the businesses operating in Routt County currently are doing that. I think it was meant to apply more to a place like a grocery store, a hardware store, etc. And it's under the heading of limiting gatherings within an establishment. And when I picture what a hotel looks like, it doesn't really feel applicable to me, just in my interpretation of what we intended in that order. So those are just some specific comments on what was given here, but broadly, I would say supportive of this. The final thing I want to just comment on, I think I heard Doug say something about an exemption request or a variance. I don't believe that that's required at all for this. I believe that all that's being requested is just allowing the local public health order to expire at the end of the month, with the lodging association making commitments to the items that they've listed here. So someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, but I think I do have a process question here. So I think, speaking for the three of us right at the moment, we're expressing the sentiment that we're prepared to allow the lodging prohibition public health order to expire at the end of the month. The potential problem I can see for the lodging industry is that we're expressing a sentiment today. We're not actually providing actual direction. And the risk would be is that between now and the end of the month, that for some reason we might see a dramatic turnaround in the incidence of cases that would really give us pause, a second thought as to whether or not we would actually do that. So I'm not quite sure how to address that. And I don't know how we can give an absolute guarantee that the lodging order will expire at the end of the month, short of lifting it right now. So I'd be curious to hear commissioners weigh in on that.
So I would say that they knew that all along, that that was the gamble, that and that's why we moved it out an extra 15 days or something too, to get toward the end of the month, so that we would, and hopefully we would be the benefactor of our own success in the social distancing and the masking. So I don't know. I think it's just like the conversation we had with CPW, that they have that, and then it's the same conversation we've had with Dr. Harrington and Carrie. There is that risk that might happen, but that's risk that everybody needs to assume. So I would say.
Yeah, I think my only comment would be, Tim, that we really, given the uncertainty and how this situation changes, we can't guarantee anything. I think what we can say is that we believe that if we don't see a significant change, which I'm optimistic that we won't, but it is our intent to allow the the lodging order to expire at the end of the month and to move forward. But the governor something could change at the state level, and the governor could go back to stay at home by the end of the month for all we know, right? I mean, again, I think we all hope that doesn't happen. Our data is not indicating that that's going to happen, but there are no guarantees in any of this. And I think we all just probably recognize that.
That's great. And I think that was my intent here, was just to get that out on the table, make sure everybody understands what we're up against here. It is 2 minutes after 1. I apologize for letting this run over, and I know that some of us need to move on to other meetings. So barring any last second super important comments, I'm prepared to adjourn this meeting.
Tim, I know that I need to be in another meeting at 1, but I do think we need to make sure we understand what happens next in terms of this lodging request. Kara, was that your question?
Some clarity. I mean, saying that we don't know what's going to happen with lodging, but we can work towards asking for a waiver for restaurants. I guess I'm struggling with that a little bit.
No, I think we do know. Let me clarify. We do know what's happening with lodging, which is that it is our intent to allow the lodging order to expire at the end of the month, period. Okay. I think the caveat was, we all understand that something could change that would change that, but that would be a very significant increase in cases is really what would change. And we're not expecting that or anticipating that. I think Tim just meant to say, we all should recognize that's always possible. It's our goal and it's our hope that that would not happen.
Okay. And then in terms of when you would determine whether or not you would let that expire or not, can you share with us just kind of the timeline logistics of that? You saw the request for...
We just told you.
That you're going to let it expire.
Yes, I think that's what I just told you.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's crystal clear.
I think we'll want to... We did, when we let our other public health order expire, we did have a Board of Health meeting where we sort of made an official statement that it was going to expire, but I don't think we would do that until closer to the date. It would be my 2 cents on that. We can ask legal what they recommend, but.
We won't ask them right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's
We
my.
appreciate that we can start moving forward.
Yes.
Beth, I have a question real quick. You know, if the order expires for the day, it's Larry. So the reason we mentioned the business protocols is that was a separate health order measure that had specific requirements. And although we're meeting the intent of it, just to cross our T's and dot our I's, we brought those up so that we wouldn't be, after the ban expires, not compliant with some other aspect to another health order that's still in place.
That makes sense. And I think we can, I guess I would just say what we stated to the restaurants, which is, and to CPW, actually, I think we stated it to CPW earlier. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but our public health order does state that mitigation protocols that are equal to or greater than those in that form are acceptable under our public health order. And so and again, that's just my interpretation on those 2 requests, and we can work with legal to just make sure that that's true. I just don't think a modification is required to meet what you guys are looking for there.
Okay, we just want to be very transparent that we're trying to be very accommodating to every rule that you've put in place.
Yeah. I think we appreciate that. Don't you guys? You guys?
No, you know, Larry, my presumption is that your mitigation protocols will qualify. I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm good with that too, Larry. I guess my only comment, it's not the you guys, I said it earlier, that's not the you guys and the guys that I'm really going to be worried about. It's going to be the mom pops or the something and not having those protocols. And the restaurants, we actually have an inspection vehicle, you know, with environmental health that actually does those inspections and the rest. So we have that vehicle to make sure that people are doing the right thing. I don't know that we have that, and I kind of brought that up earlier, but I don't know that we kind of have that with the lodging industry. Not so much in the big, you guys, the big guys, but you know, the rest of the ones down there that make sure that they know the protocols and that they're exercising them. So we'll have to think about that.
So I just comment that this order doesn't actually expire until the end of May. And I don't think we've fully addressed everything that we need to address in order to allow that order to expire. I think this is a big component of it, but we need to talk about those kind of residential short-term rentals, partially once we learn what the state is doing, as well as private campgrounds and the other things that are covered by that. So I think we, the commissioners, the Board of Health, just need to note that that's another item we need to make sure we address before the end of the month.
I agree.
Part of that discussion and make sure that we're.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. I was thinking it probably should start with the policy group. So maybe that's.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the opportunity, but we had a great meeting yesterday with the policy group and everybody, and there's a couple members that are on the phone call to the meeting today, but yeah, I think everybody, it was, you know, it wasn't a lot of discussion, but then you guys all got the minutes. And so, but there was some good discussion on, you know, and the phased moving forward and, you know, protocols and on all those things as well. So the policy group had a good meeting yesterday. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciated that. And I thought those notes that came were helpful, just, and just for the benefit of the public here, that we just appreciate the input from all of our municipalities and from the chamber and from the hospital on these decisions. And we did receive some input from them about support for where we go today. So.
Great. So let's go ahead and finish up, I guess, the takeaway from today's meetings with CPW, with the the Restaurant Association and now with the Lodging Association is that we are moving forward. We're moving forward in what I believe is a responsible way with an eye towards protecting public health, but really taking some risks and doing some risk management to be able to do whatever we can to support our business community. And Kara has put it really well that these two sectors of the economy really support many other sectors of the economy. So let's move forward. Let's be careful out there and let's get our economy back on track. So having said that, barring any last second comments, I'm prepared to adjourn this meeting.
Tim, you know I love last second comments, so I'm just going to throw one in. I want to just also really underscore a few things that we've said about why we're where we are and why we're able to move forward, which is really the commitment of our community, including our businesses, to doing the things that are necessary to limit the spread of the virus. And so I want to really thank everyone for that and just emphasize how important it is to keep up the good work that we're doing as a community on those fronts. Sure. And then just really acknowledge that the work that our public health department has done to increase our capacity for testing and contact tracing is the other huge component of our ability to move forward. So just want to make those acknowledgements.
Thank you for that, Beth.
Yeah, of course.
All right. I believe we are done here. Thank you to everybody for attending and participating.
Thank you.
Very much.